A Traveller's Guide to the Forgotten Realms, Episode 10, of Caravans, Coin, and the Mountain Road. My dear Lord Sandrier, I write to you from the slow side of the road. That might sound like a strange distinction, but I assure you it's a real one. There is all the difference in the world between travelling through a place and being obliged to move goods through it intact. I've lately fallen in with a small caravan of traders making their way south and east cautiously along the long, often disagreeable influence of the Sword Mountains, and I find the pace of such company has altered not merely my journey, but my thoughts. When I travelled in the company of the Rockseeker brothers, the land seemed severe but negotiable. We made good time, even through difficult country, because dwarves on a purpose tend to regard hardship as little more than an impolite suggestion. They climbed because there was something worth reaching, descended because there was no use remaining above, and pushed onward with that particular dwarven conviction that the world, though frequently inconvenient, will, in the end, yield to determination, strong legs, and sufficient profanity. A caravan does not think in those terms, so I've learned. A caravan must travel not at the pace of its boldest member, but at the pace of its most fragile necessity. That, I think, is worth remembering, and it never occurred to me before. There are 3 wagons in the company I now keep, carrying grain, lamp oil, linen, tools, smoked meat, nails, salt, dried apples, and hundreds of other small, dull, essential things upon which civilization quietly leans. Their master is a broad fellow named Corvan Pell, who looks permanently as if he's just caught someone trying to cheat him and fully intends to prove it with his fists. His accounts are kept by one Mistress Mirry Underbow, a halfling of quick eyes, quicker sums, and an evident belief that the rest of us are tolerated accidents in a universe otherwise composed of ledgers. There's also a drover, a pair of guards, 2 muleteers, a cook whose stews improve in inverse proportion to his honesty about their contents, and 1 passenger beside myself, a pale and poised air genasi called Nalise, who has a curious habit of speaking as though every sentence has already been carried half away by some private breeze. They're a practical people, which is to say that they're among the most realistic philosophers I've met. A road to such folk is not romance, it is cost. The Sword Mountains make this plain very, very quickly. To the untravelled eye, mine own included, mountains are often treated as backdrop, picturesque things to paint behind heroes. But a mountain range is not scenery, it is a tax upon movement. That came direct from Mistress Underbow. It slows men, tires beast, breaks axles, alters weather, shortens tempers, and makes every object on one side of it more expensive when you get to the other. That is one of the truths so obvious that it oddly goes unnoticed. A steep road is not merely difficult, it is dear. A narrow pass is not merely dramatic, it is slow. A wet descent is not merely dangerous, it's potentially catastrophic. And all of that, in time, becomes price. The Sword Mountains are not the loftiest heights in Faerûn, nor the wildest, but they are more than sufficient to remind a traveller that the land itself is often the first and sternest governor of trade. Paths bend where stone demands it, rain gathers where peaks permit it. Mist lingers in hollows, and cold clings to shaded slopes longer than one would wish. A clear morning below may mean slick stone above. A mild road at dawn may become a mire by noon if meltwater chooses badly. We've lost a lot of hours, not to monsters nor brigands, nor broken harnesses, but to the simple reluctance of a laden wagon to descend a wet, soggy incline with any dignity. And this is with experienced hands. That perhaps, then, is the first thought worth taking from them. That in spite of all the gifts that our world blesses us with, geography still wins most arguments. Indeed, on the road like this, one begins to see that the difference between adventuring travel and commercial travel is not merely one of speed, but of philosophy. Adventurers travel to travel. Merchants travel to arrive with their goods still sellable. The distinction is immense. With the Rockseekers, I walked in company with purpose. Their minds were fixed beyond the next ridge, beyond the next rise, beyond even the next hardships. They made time by ignoring everything that could be ignored. They travelled as men pursuing inheritance, danger, and destiny. A split nail, a sore shoulder, thin rein, poor footing, they're irritations to the Rockseekers, and were treated as such. This caravan cannot afford that attitude. Its business isn't glory, but margin. It is the matter of civilization. One does not urge a wagon team up a slope simply because one's blood is high and one misses a lost mine. One asks what the road does to the wheel. One asks what strain the axle has already taken. One asks how long it is going to be before it can be refit. Whether the horse will still pull tomorrow if it is made to overwork today. One asks whether arriving a day sooner matters if, in the one spoils half the apples, bursts 2 casks, or all the gods forbid, kills the mule. I confess, my lord, this makes for less stirring progress. But it also makes for a truer understanding of how the world survives. The common life of Faerûn is not chiefly sustained by heroes. I'm sure you'll have to conceal your gasps of astonishment. It's sustained by people who know how much a road costs. I've spent much of the past few days walking beside the second wagon with Miri Underbow, who's been kind enough to answer my questions in the tone one might reserve for a very small, simple child who has shown promise in a field unlikely to ever to feed him. It was from her that I first heard the matter put properly, and I paraphrase. "You temple folk and gentlemen," she said, checking a tallied scratch card, "always think that value lives in the thing itself. It doesn't. Value lives in where it is, when it is, and how hard it was to get there." I think that was one of the most profound things I've ever heard, tell you the truth. A sack of oats in a farming village at harvest may be unremarkable. The same sack, carried through mountains to an upland stead with tired horses and a month of poor weather behind it, is another matter entirely. A crate of nails in a city warehouse is inventory, but that same crate where winter repairs must be made before the first serious frost is scarcity. A barrel of lamp oil in Neverwinter is stock. A barrel of lamp oil in a small settlement, like Phandalin, after 3 caravans have failed to arrive, is near enough to treasure. So much of trade, then, is not merely the exchanging of goods. It's the movement of need. I suppose this is where I should talk about coin, and more interestingly, where it proves insufficient by itself. A younger version of myself, raised among ledgers better illuminated and less honestly kept than those of Mistress Underbow, might have imagined that the matter was simple. Copper for small, silver for common, gold for the grand, and all the rest a complication for financiers and dwarves. The road laughs at such neatness. Coin has value, of course, but in practice what matters is not only what a piece of metal is worth, but who trusts it, whether it's recognised, whether it's clipped, whether the settlement in question has enough trade passing through to prefer coin to barter, and whether those doing the trading need money more than they need things. This too it's a useful thought for any traveller, or builder of worlds, I suppose. Currency is never only metal, it's confidence. In larger towns, confidence is easier. In cities, easier still. Coin changes hands readily when many hands are ready to change many things. But beyond such centres, one finds that barter remains not only some primitive remnant, but a thoroughly sensible response to circumstances. A farmer may take silver for eggs, but he may prefer lamp oil. A charcoal burner may accept coin, or he might rather have salt, stitching needles, a good new pair of boots, or a new hatchet head. A shepherd on a poor road in a poor season may not especially care what king's face is stamped on your gold, if what he actually needs is grain, cord, and a promise that the peddler passing next month will honour the same rate. Trade, then, is conducted in layers. At the broadest and most ordinary level, most goods in Faerûn still move in the same basic ways they always have, by cart, wagon, mule, horse, riverboat, coaster, and human back. Grain doesn't teleport cheaply, timber is not flown over mountains by obliging griffins, iron ingots are seldom carried by carpet. The things ordinary people need in ordinary quantities still move through surprisingly ordinary hardship. And I think there is charm in that. For the realms are magical beyond the imaginings of any sober civilization. One may send messages by scroll, cross impossible distances by portals, ride griffins, hire ships touched by queer enchantment, by spaces larger within than without, and if one is very rich, very powerful, or very reckless, step past the old authority of roads altogether. This is not about the same as abolishing distance, it's merely cheating it selectively. That, I think, is the more interesting truth. Magic does not erase geography. It removes the traveller from it. Had I teleported, or taken some great flying beast from Neverwinter to Phandalin, the things I would missed. A great lord may learn in hours that which takes a villager 10 days to hear. A wizard may send a message farther in an afternoon than a rider could carry it in a week. A temple may dispatch a healer by means unavailable to any farmer on the same road. An urgent jewel, treaty, relic, or packet of state papers may travel by methods that no cask of oil or sack of that flour ever will. The impossible exists in Faerûn, certainly, but the flour still needs moving. This means the world lives in tiers. There is the world of common movement, wheel, hoof, sail, and foot. There's a world of privilege movement, fast, good, well-bred horses, flying mounts, courier magic, good roads, armed escorts, and the right names spoken at the right gates. And above these, there's the world of the exceptional, portals, great spells, dragon-back bargains, enchanted conveyance, and all the rare devices by which the mighty or the desperate may ignore for a time what ordinary folk endure every day. These worlds overlap, but they do not belong equally to all. And that, if you'll forgive me, is one of the great civilizational truths of these realms of ours. Even in a world where some can fly, most still take a wagon. I suspect many settings, and many minds within them, go astray by forgetting this. One hears teleportation and imagines the death of roads. One hears of magic carpets and thinks mountains no longer matter. One hears of dragons and imagines trade transformed beyond recognition. Perhaps somewhere, under some outlandish and unstable order, that might even be so. But across Faerûn, or the Faerûn I know, wonder sits uncomfortably atop necessity. It doesn't replace it. A caravan still judges mud, mules still slip, barrels still break, wheels still crack. And the price of all of these things still arise before the customer gets what they need. I think that what I admire in traders, for all their caution and complaints, is that they understand, better than most princes, the actual shape of the world. Priests speak of truths eternal, sages of truths hidden, but merchants often speak of truths operative. They know what fear does to a route, they know what delay does to value. They know which villages can survive one missed caravan, and which cannot. They know that there are places on a map which do not merely threaten travellers, but bend the very habits of trade around themselves like stones in a stream. And so inevitably our fireside talks has turned to one such place on the horizon, Crypt Garden. I've heard the name before, of course, but this time it was spoken casually enough, with that half-dismissive wariness come to local dangers one hopes not to meet. But the nearer our discussions have crept toward the road south and east, the more the forest has acquired a kind of weight in conversation. No one says very much about it all at once. That's telling in itself. Caravan speaks of routes near it, but never through it. Miri, who has an opinion on everything from wool tariffs to the likely parentage of our cook, grows noticeably brief whenever the K name is raised. One of the guards, a man loud in all lesser matters, made a joke about the place on our first evening, and has not repeated it since. Even Nalise, who normally wears the concerns of others with a light and distant courtesy, went still when I asked if she'd ever seen the forest edge. "From above," she said. "And?" I asked. She looked into the fire a long while before answering. She said that some places do not need to move in order to alter the path of those around them. I wish I'd have come up with that one. For that's the thing, a dangerous forest does not begin to matter where one enters it. It begins to matter much earlier than that. It alters rumour, and rumour alters route, route alters timing, timing alters price, price alters decision, and so a place one has never seen may actually be reaching into the purses, plans and anxieties of men miles away. This too is a thought worth carrying into one's own tales. A dragon need not appear to rule a region, need not burn down a village. Sometimes it's just enough that merchants know that they are there and price in a detour. For now we remain on the road, the mountains still watching to the north and west, the wagons still complaining. One of the mules still continues to disprove any generous theory of animal character, while the other one is simply a pleasure, who desires only an apple at the end of the day. The days are slow, progress even slower, and yet I feel no frustration in writing it to you. Rather the opposite. There's a richness in such travel that I've not properly appreciated before. With the brothers Rockseeker I learned how purpose can drive men through hardship toward wonder. With these traders, however, I'm learning how hardship itself is measured and managed, endured and turned through patience, sums and a lot of foul language, into the matter of everyday life. Both, I think, are essential to understanding these realms, for a world is not merely made of its marvels, my lord. It is made of the ways in which people go on living among them. Until my next letter, I remain, as ever, your devoted correspondent, Falrien Sunison.